Hello and welcome to the 2025 International Media Briefing for Fruit Logistica, which is coming to us very soon. My name is Chris White. I'm the very honored to be the chairman of the advisory board of Fruit Logistica, but in my day-to-day life, I'm the managing director of Fruitnet. And I'm very pleased once again to have been asked to moderate our press briefing this year. It's going to take about 45 minutes and is divided really into two sections. The first, I'll talk in a moment to our new senior vice president at Messe, the big boss of Fruit Logistica, David Ruetz. And then we'll be having a high-powered panel discussion with three guests from the United States and two from Europe, Cathy, the chief executive officer of the International Fresh Produce Association, Philippe Binard, the general delegate of Freshfel Europe, and Richard Schouten, who is the director of the Fresh Produce Center, for those Dutch speakers out there, the GroentenFruit Huis. And they will be joining me for a discussion about what's happening this year, well, what's happening generally this year, and a lot is happening out there in the world of fruits and vegetables, and more specifically, what's happening with the whole political landscape that's changing, as we will have seen for those of us who tuned into the inauguration of the new president in the United States yesterday, as well as some of the changes that we're seeing, of course, here in Europe and elsewhere in the world. We'll be discussing those with our experts in just a short time. But first, I'd like to come to our first guest. And our first guest, as I said, the big boss of Fruit Logistica, the senior vice president at Messe Berlin, David Ruetz. David, welcome to this, your first time at the International Media Briefing. You've been in the job now, well, you've been at Messe Berlin for the best part of 25 years and more, but you're relatively new to Fruit Logistica, not new to fruits and vegetables, of course. And I know from our various discussions that you're a big consumer, and I know that you're not just saying that, you are a big consumer of fruits and vegetables. For Fruit Logistica this year, we've got, well, a great show. 2,500 exhibitors from more than 90 countries are participating. Across, as always, our 26 exhibition halls, 128,000 square meters of gross space. Where are the biggest and strongest participants coming from again this year, David?
Actually, I think I can answer this, and thanks for asking, Chris. Hi to everyone. I'm the new kid on the block, and I'm representing the 1,000 employees of Messe Berlin who are ready to welcome anybody who is somebody in the industry who will come in less than 2 weeks to Berlin to meet here during Fruit Logistica 2025. Now, as to your question, Chris, what we see is that China, Turkey, and Egypt have their record participation this year, as it's their largest exhibition area ever. I mean, our exhibition has existed since 1993, and this is a truly record. What we see, and I'd like to have a little focus on China, is that there's an exhibitor growth of 30%, especially from China. And we have interesting delegations coming, actually, partners from the Shanghai Huis fruit and vegetable market and from the Guangzhou Jiangnan fruit and vegetable wholesale market. So it's going to be an interesting mix of trade visitors and exhibitors, again, from Asia, but of course from all of the world. Over 90 countries are present.
And those two wholesale markets, of course, were sponsors, partners at the Asia Fruit Logistics Show in Hong Kong last September. But the strongest participation, as always, is from those core countries that have always been as it were, the core exhibiting countries at Fruit Logistica. And they're, of course, led, I think, by Italy. Is that right?
Yeah, well, it feels that Italy has their own show within the event. And of course, we have the Netherlands, we have Spain, we have France, and Germany being really the core markets. But what I see is that all in all, people, and that's what we've learned after COVID, people really count on the personal interaction. And this is why we hope to cater to the magic formula during the three Fruit Logistica days, if I may say so. Have you heard about the magic formula?
Please tell us about the magic formula, David. I think you've got it there in front of you.
Yes, it's the 3 C's, like C, like Caesar. The first is that, of course, it's obvious we make contacts. There's a lot of new contacts to be made, a lot of business connections to be fostered. The second C is content. We have an incredible array of topics, 5 stages, 100 speakers, and 1,000 ideas, if I may say. And the third C is commerce. So in the end, it must materialize in business what we do, because there's a lot of investment going on in traveling, coming to Berlin, in creating this interaction. So we're sure people will go home inspired and with new business ideas, and of course with contracts done.
Now, the 3 C's of contact, content, and commerce. We're coming on to the commerce bit in a moment, when I'm going to invite my 3 guests to come and talk to us about some of the bigger picture commercial issues that we know about. As far as contact is concerned, we've got many thousands of visitors, as you said, traveling or getting ready, packing their bags, ready to go to Berlin, as we all have done for many years in that early February window. As far as the content is concerned, Fruitnet, we supply much of that content, but we've got some exciting content changes this year. Can you tell us some of them, David?
Yeah, actually, what we will do on the last day of the show is what we'll call the Fruitful Friday on the 7th of February. This is a dedicated day for more in-depth networking, for science presentations. We'll have a mascot race. And of course, we have the Fruit Logistica Innovation Awards on that day. So please mark your calendars and be curious for those incredible innovations that I've scouted already. For example, this mysterious orange citrus fruit from Spain that I saw that's in the awards. I noticed that there is a drone system from Hungary who helps with monitoring and spraying. And there's an AI-supported camera for greenhouse vegetable production that comes from Israel. So there's a lot of products to be seen, a lot of ideas to be taken from. And last but not least, we have our Startup World in Hall 3.1, extended to 3 days, together with our Farming Forward stage. So it's kind of the epicenter of innovation, if I may say so.
And of course, that epicenter of innovation is always culminates with the award of the Fruit Logistica Innovation Award, the FLIA, which has again been going for many years and is, I know, a coveted prize for anybody who submits their innovation, because it's judged by the peers at Fruit Logistica and so on. And you mentioned this question of the mascot race. This is a light-hearted bit of fun. There are so many mascots wandering around, these big fruits and vegetables we see around the show, that we are putting together a little race where they're going to do, I think, over, I don't know whether it's 1,500 meters, but certainly over a few meters, to see which mascot is going to get first. Any predictions on who's going to win, David?
Well, I personally like the banana mascot very much, but we saw many mascots on Asia Fruit Logistica in Hong Kong last year.
Did. Yes.
And I think we kind of got this inspiration from there, because any producer has their own mascots. It's kind of a hobby. We still take applications for mascots to take part, and I promise it won't be the 42-point-some kilometer marathon through Berlin. Just a short. Just a short way to go.
Well, perhaps our friends from China are bringing one of their super duper mascots and will win this first inaugural mascot race, which is happening as on the Friday, the 7th. But to more serious things, we've also got on the content side the trend report, which was published in a few months ago in autumn. There's the statistics handbook that's available, of course, both of these online. There's also a podcast studio that you're doing for the first time in Berlin. Tell us something more about that, David, if you would.
Yeah, actually, it's the first season of our Fruitcast, the Fruit Logistica podcast, and it will be recorded actually on all of the 3 days of our show. So our trade visitors will be able to listen to the episodes as a live podcast on site, and of course in the archive as they travel home.
Yeah, and I should point out that other excellent podcasts like my own are available to listen to as well. There's the last but not least, David, is we've got also for the first time something that visitors can take home. In addition to all those contacts they make, a little souvenir of Berlin. You're opening a souvenir shop at the trade show this year.
That's correct. It's a little fun fact, nevertheless, but we are cooperating with a famous brand in Berlin that is called Ampelmann, which takes their graphics and their ideas actually from the Berlin streetlights. Because
Yes.
if you notice, if you cross an intersection in Berlin, there are particular streetlight figures in that
Traffic
red,
lights, yeah.
yellow traffic lights, and you might be curious to have a look into our souvenir shop.
Yeah, excellent. Well, those are all some light-hearted elements to what is a very busy and very serious, if I might say, few days in Berlin. It's as you have said, the 3 C's of content, contact, and finally commerce, which is underpinning the great success of this show that we've been coming to, all of us, for many years. And we're looking forward to meeting you, David, and all your colleagues, your 1,000 colleagues at Messe Berlin, when we arrive and you open the doors to us on the 5th and close the doors to us on the 7th in the evening. And we wish you well with the final preparations, and we look forward to seeing you very soon.
Thank you very much, Chris, and see you all very soon.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much indeed for your participation at this international media briefing. Right, let's now turn to the core part of this media briefing, which is to look at some of the developments that we're seeing around the world when it comes to the political. The political underpins, of course, the economic, and the economic underpins the way in which we can trade successfully in fruits and vegetables. Ours is a global business, and so what happens in one corner of the planet affects what is happening in the other corner of the planet. And so that whole issue of politics and the way in which trade politics happens is fundamental to the future of our business of fruits and vegetables. And fortunately enough, having had a year last year full of elections, we've now got a year full of the aftermath of those elections. I'm very pleased to welcome 3 excellent guests to us, to this international media briefing, who will be coming up on our screen right away. There they are. To talk and discuss these issues with me. I'm very pleased to welcome from Washington, D.C., Catherine Burns, who's the Chief Executive Officer of the International Fresh Produce Association, Philippe Binard, who is today in Paris, but always sitting in Brussels as the General Delegate of Freshfel Europe. Philippe, welcome. And last but not least, Richard Schouten, who is the Director of the Fresh Produce Centre, the GroentenFruit Huis in the Netherlands. And the Netherlands, of course, is a key country for import and export. So 3 more experienced and better people to talk about this particular issue. I don't know. And we found them and we're bringing them here today. You can ask, if you wish, your questions in the chat, and I will be able to take them and put them to our 3 speakers. But I would like to start, if I may, by talking about, well, the obvious one, which is, of course, what happened in Washington, D.C. yesterday, which was the inauguration of the President of the United States, President Donald Trump, for Trump 2.0, the second go he has at being President of the United States. And Cathy, you were there at the inauguration, weren't you, yesterday?
I was at, well, first of all, Chris, thank you so much for having me and including me with these esteemed panelists. Really a pleasure to be here. I was part of the inauguration festivities and activities. The inauguration is more than just, the swearing of the president. There are certainly a lot of activities over the few days before and few days after the event. But at the end of the day, the inauguration is really a celebration of democracy and freedom in the United States. And I would say that Washington, D.C. did not disappoint in that effort. So I was able to take part in a couple of the balls. And I was at the Capital One Arena. As you know, they moved it inside the inauguration. So most people were at the Capitol for the swearing-in ceremony, but I did make it to the arena to experience the celebration.
Wonderful. Well, it's something that, of course, all around the world, we'll have been glued to our TV screens, watching what was happening. And of course, we've been now, because of the way in which the new president has come into office, and he's already signed, I don't know how many executive orders, but many of them, and many more to come. I turned on the BBC News before this program while I was having my lunch, and one of the headlines was all about the fact of the executive order that plans for the United States to leave the Paris Accord on climate change. And there are other issues that I'd like to raise with you, if I may, just now, and get your view from the US, and they relate to, well, other things. There's the issue about tariffs. There's been an awful lot about tariffs and what might happen with tariffs. I'm trying to figure out what the cost of an avocado might be if the tariffs on Mexico are put, and how we're going to afford that for the Super Bowl when it comes, because I know eating avocados is a big thing there. But there are other things. This huge focus on business that is being put by the new administration. You've got a health secretary in Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is very, very committed to changing the diets of Americans. What are all your reactions to these things, and what kind of advice are you giving your members out there in the field in the United States and elsewhere, of course?
Yeah, I think you asked probably 4 questions in that one question,
did.
Chris. But that's fine. First of all, backing up to the inauguration, one thing I would want to highlight is that every 4 years there is a bipartisan agriculture ball that took place last night, and it's a great opportunity for both Republicans and Democrats to come together and celebrate agriculture in totality. It was electric. It was sold out. There was a wait list. We had members of Congress, both on the Democratic side and the Republican side, join the event and speak. And it was a real celebration of agriculture, and the energy and enthusiasm of what's ahead was very palpable last night. So I wanted to make sure that from an agriculture standpoint, at the end of the day, what we have our eye on, Chris, are 3 things, actually. One, we believe that we will see some deregulation happening, again, based on previous experience, Trump 1.0, and that will be favorable for our growers and hopefully the business community at large. Secondly, the focus on health. Make America healthier again, regardless of what that looks like. Fruits and vegetables are a key component to the health of the nation and the health of the world. So we are optimistic, and certainly we'll be pushing incentives for policies related to incentives to drive the consumption of fruits and vegetables. Sales cures all. If we can drive consumption, there will be a much, much better environment for our growers and, quite frankly, anyone across the supply chain. And then this is an administration that's going to care very much about business prosperity. And so looking at, again, we're less than 24 hours in with President Trump for the second time. So there is a lot to consider and a lot to learn, and quite frankly, a lot to educate this administration on related to agriculture and certainly related to fruits and vegetables. But as my experience with the administration is they care very much about the prosperity of growers, the prosperity of, again, anyone across that supply chain. As it relates to tariffs and the implications of tariffs, what we know for certain are trade agreements are vital for sustaining our producers around the world. What that looks like, obviously, we don't know that yet, but really, we need our consumers. From my perspective, food security is a national security issue, regardless of what country you live in, and the opportunity to have trade agreements that will continue to service different countries, that ultimately drive consumption for consumers, but they need to make sense for all sides of the equation. And I think that's the due diligence that's happening right now. And again, we have already put forth our priorities We will have, obviously, a new head of the Department of Agriculture, USDA here in the U.S. She has a confirmation hearing coming up on Thursday, and we have already sent her a letter with our priorities to make sure that she is clear. Obviously, increasing consumption is number one, but there's a lot that happens, obviously, in a lot of different parts of the administration, but the USDA in particular is a really strong partner of ours and needs to be in the future. So I'll pause there. There's a lot to say about what's happening in the U.S. right now, but certainly don't want to monopolize the time.
And I know that my other guests, both Philippe and Richard, will have questions to ask and opinions to give on this. And but I want to be the first to have the idea of patenting a MAHA hat, Make in America Healthy Again hat, which I might go and do straight after our meeting, but I've probably beaten to it now.
Yeah, you have been beaten to it, and actually, yeah, there are plenty of MAHA hats floating around Washington, D.C. And last night, this is a first, one of our members of Congress put on a Make Agriculture Great Again hat.
Oh, that's a good.
So again, can't stress enough the bipartisan nature focused on agriculture right now. Obviously, we need a farm bill. We need farm labor reform. We need our market access issues to be resolved. So this 119th Congress has a lot at stake and a lot on their plate. And based on everyone I've talked to, they're ready to get to work. Great.
Good. Okay. Well, thank you. If I may, I'll turn to my next guest, and that's Philippe Binard. Philippe is the General Delegate of Freshfel Europe. And of course, Philippe, you view this as a European looking at what's happening over in the United States of America and the way things might go in the US. For us in Europe, sitting here in Europe, it's important what happens there, of course, isn't it? What comments do you have to this?
Well, I think it's important to see what is happening in the United States because of some of the impact it will have on the way the world was organized so far around multilateralism with the WTO, with the WHO, with the Paris Agreement that has been mentioned by you before. I think these are places where the US might withdraw, and I think that might change a little bit the general environment and the priority in the different region of the world. And what we see, I think, from Europe, we have to look what is happening in the US, the implication of some of the measures that can be taken there. But we have also to look the other system that we have on the East, which is the Russian situation and all the geopolitical turmoil that are severely impacting Europe and beyond. Also, we have seen other consequences in North Africa as well. So that's a third model. So we have the US model, which is more unilateralism. We have the European model, which is still believing into the necessity to move towards more sustainability and addressing the climate change issue. You have the brutal geopolitical system of Russia, and we cannot ignore also the super economic power of giant in Asia, being India or China, and the role that they could take also. So I think the world is really divided in four major regions, which have a different speed, a different priority. And we definitely, Europe, which is a big exporter, which is also the most significant importer, I think, in the world in terms of sourcing fruit and vegetables. So I think we have to combine all these different systems. I know that the fresh produce sector in Europe and elsewhere have always shown resilient to adapt to different crises, and we had a lot of crises in the last few years. Proliferation, we were calling that the polycrisis, ranging from COVID to the war in Ukraine to Brexit also some years ago, but also the energy crisis. We had the climatic crisis, the economic crisis for the last few years, and I think all of that has a significant impact on what we want to do in Freshfel, which is definitively securing a more sustainable and healthy diet. I don't like so much the concept of plant-based diet, which was used previously. I think we have to talk what we want to achieve, which is an increased consumption of fruit and vegetable, not anymore to 400 grams, but to 800 grams, which take 400 grams for the health and 400 grams for the planet. So I think we have a lot of work to be done there, and I think it will be very interesting to see what might happen. We have our own debate in Europe about the burden that it is to shift towards a more sustainable food system. It is quite challenging. It is leading to a lot of reporting. We talk much in Europe about corporate social responsibility reporting, about environmental footprint. Will the US follow this same path? And we have a lot of global companies in the fresh produce sector which work with both the US and the European markets. So that might have a significant impact of company if the two major continent in terms of population consumption of fruit and vegetable and international trade fall completely apart with their priority. And I know that in Europe we have also for the moment a certain rebalance which is being demanded between the Green Deal and the Farm to Fork strategy, which have marked the previous legislative term in Europe, which were mainly driven by the environmental pillars. And now there is certainly for competitiveness issue, for maybe health aspect, to make sure that the other pillars of sustainability, the social and the economic one, are in a better balance with the pillar on environment. So I think we will move to some interesting years. As you say, every 4 or 5 years we have a completely new agenda, and we'll have to cope with that. And I'm confident that the sector will, as usual, show its demonstration of resilience. And I think on all the debate that we have much to bring, not only for healthier diet of citizens around the world, but also for protecting the environment, because we are small user at the end of plant protection product. We use what is needed, and maybe a little bit more will be needed because of climate change and emerging pests. But we are also part of the solution by having carbon sequestration in our chart, by having other positive contribution for fighting against the climate and all the challenge that it brings about.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Philippe. As you say, that a very mixed agenda, an agenda that changes. One thing that doesn't change, of course, is, as Cathy mentioned a moment ago, and we all agree with, is this question about how do we grow the consumption of fresh fruits and vegetables. And if we all had growing consumption of fresh fruits and vegetables in markets around the world, how many of the challenges that we face as people in the business would transform. Let me come to you back to you in a moment, Philippe, but let me introduce our third guest to have a quick chat with Richard Schouten. Richard is the director of the fruit and vegetable GroentenFruit Huis in the Netherlands. If we could bring Richard up onto the screen, because I wanted to include Richard, and I'll bring both Philippe and Cathy back in a moment, but to talk briefly to Richard about how he sees things. I suppose not from a local point of view, because of course the Netherlands is a global player when it comes to the buying and selling of fruits and vegetables. But some of these challenges we've talked about, Richard, we heard about the changes that are happening in the United States. Philippe outlined some of the bigger global challenges that we've got from various parts of the world. Some of the challenges that you're facing or looking at in the Netherlands now are almost closer to home. We're all meeting in Berlin very shortly, and a few weeks after our meeting at Fruit Logistica, the Germans are going to vote. There's an election in Germany, and we've got an economy in Germany that isn't firing on all cylinders as normally. What are some of the challenges that you think face you in the Netherlands as a result of that?
Well, thank you, Chris, for having me here as well. Well, a lot of questions again. I think that the political situation in Europe is disturbed at the moment. We see the disturbing of the things which are happening in Germany, but look also at France. There's also in Brussels a new parliament and new government, which is chosen last year, and they have another look upon the market and the position of farmers, which is maybe positive, but on the long term, maybe the Green Deal changed a little, but on the long term, we are still thinking that you have to work on sustainability. And I think that when we're looking at United States for Europe, if we look at the figures, which are, let's say, import and export, fruits and vegetable is balanced between those two countries or two continents. And also, it's not such a big deal in money. But I'm more concerned about what will happen with countries like Mexico or Peru, and also maybe Canada, if they want to export to the United States and they are facing 20% more tariffs than they have now. That can disturb the market there. And it could be, I already heard that the Mexican people are looking at new markets. Well, what's our new market? That's Indonesia, India, Japan, China, Russia, but also Europe. This will influence the price of the products like avocado. On the other hand, if I'm looking at what's happening on sustainability, I think that all the things which are proposed now, I'm not the specialist, Cathy is that maybe more in her country, but I see negative things which are influencing sustainability. I noticed that also that the attendance for Europe for like some pesticides is bigger than in the United States. We have to face that. If the United States is changing, I think for us in Europe, it's very important that we are working still on supplying healthy and sustainable food. And I know that also Cathy and her organization are having that as an aim. And I think it's also important that we as global suppliers of fruits and vegetables have to cooperate and to make our own standards. Don't wait till political people are making that, because they are always changing their plans. I think we have to do it ourselves. It's in our veins to do it. And it's important that we as Europe are working together with United States and Canada, like we do already, and we continue that. Because this is the future. And if Philippe is saying 800 grams of fruits and vegetables or only vegetables a day, well, we need more fruits and vegetables to grow. And we have to do it in a sustainable way. And I think our message is, don't wait on political people only. Don't react. Take our own plan.
Good, thank you. Well, let's open the discussion then to all three of you, if I could. Christian, if you could bring all of our three guests up on the screen, because I do want to take what all of you have said, but actually that take the lead from what you just said there, Richard, and ask Cathy about this, because one thing I was struck when I was in Atlanta at the IFPA show last autumn was the way in which the discussion there was, it felt very European in a way. All of a sudden we were talking about sustainability in a way I'd not heard of before in the United States when I've been to previous events in the past. And this is very much, it seems to me, the center of the culture of the organization now for you at the IFPA. You have at the same time a government that seems to be going away from that. How are you going to manage that particular dichotomy or challenge that sits with you?
Well, thank you for recognizing the expansion, because it's intentional. As the International Fresh Produce Association, that means that we need to be at every table where food is being discussed internationally, and trying to influence discussions. Part of it's education, part of it's data and sharing data around different parts of the world. But I think the real opportunity, I think we have a phenomenal opportunity as an industry around the world to really make a difference on regulatory reform. And regardless of what country you're in, I think there's a lot of countries that are frustrated with government overreach. And as Richard said, we need to make sure that regardless of what seeds we are planting is foundational for the industry, regardless of who's in office. That's a different muscle than just either supporting a particular position or trying to remove a barrier from a particular position. So I think we're in a very unique position on all these levels. Actually, the biggest opportunity for us to improve the sustainability of this planet is to eat more fruits and vegetables. We're the most sustainable product on the planet. So for us, it's really getting more bold and aggressive on tables around the world for these types of conversation. The innovation that's coming to our industry is, and David mentioned it earlier, is there's huge opportunity for our industry that has been a lagger in innovation is now coming to the forefront. And so match that with sustainability, with supply chain efficiencies, with driving consumption. It could be the perfect storm for us to be able to catapult into the future and really change the trajectory of human health. In order to do that, you have to have great market access. Trade flows are changing around the world. And the other thing that's happening on the buyer side, certainly, is there's a lot of scenario planning happening right now. Richard mentioned that just a second ago, is that, if certain markets are going to be more difficult to do business with, where am I going to be able to source product, and what implications does that have on the other markets? I can't stress that enough, is that the strong, great businesses are doing some scenario planning. Hopefully we won't have to use it, but I think it's very smart as we look. Hopefully we have to use it because consumption will be so strong that we need more market access and need to deliver more fruits and vegetables. So I also echo Philippe's comment around resiliency. There's no industry that is resilient as resilient as ours. We work together. We extend a hand across commodities and countries and supply chains, and I think that's going to be really critical for the future of the globe.
Yes, thank you, Cathy. And in all the talk and the reading I've been doing over the last several weeks and the last couple of days about the incoming administration, the word that keeps on coming up is this idea of competitive protectionism, that we're going into a protectionist era. But when I look at what you're saying and what you've all been saying, it seems actually there's a real coherence and a real coming together in terms of the big issues. And those are around this question about how do we grow consumption of fruits and vegetables. Philippe?
No, you are totally right, but there will be certainly disturbances on trade. I think the point made by Richard is very clear. There is a lot of problem to come. And also, when I look at the United States, despite the trade is not so big, there are already a lot of missed opportunity. The US remain a closed market where we have to negotiate case by case our entry to the market. There are a number of cases like the apple and pears which are pending for almost 10 years without any progress. So I think it does not happen like that when we talk about access to Europe. Maybe in Europe there will be also a little bit more protectionism, but I think the protectionism will not be really a question of market access, but more a question of access to the customer, which will continue to be very demanding in terms of requirements, which might be a certain challenge for suppliers from outside Europe, which might have to cope with different requirements around the globe, which might make Europe maybe less attractive. But this does not really is seen into the data. When I look the evolution of the last few years, import has been standing relatively firm. And in fact, this was maybe one in the dashboard, one of the segments which was continuing to grow. So I think there is a capacity of adaptation also to the more difficult requirements from the customer, while the issue of market access might be a little bit different. But also to comment on the comments of Richard, I think the US might have some problem for exporting. We have seen that in the first Trump administration, where they have decreased their export to Canada, they have decreased their export to Mexico, they have decreased their export to China, they have decreased their export to India because of the counter-sanctions that were taken into this country. So maybe there will be opportunity. I think it's sad to have to talk like this, that we will find opportunity for the Europeans because the US will be blocked because of the measure that they have taken, counter-sanctions are being taken. And there is also another issue, I think, that has not been mentioned by Cathy, that we have also in Europe. It's a question of labor. We miss a lot of labor to pick the fruit. We are a labor-intensive sector. And I think what has been announced in the US that quite a number of migrants will not be able to go. At the end, they are contributing to the economy. They were contributing to picking the fruit. And I know that in the last administration, there were a significant shortage of people to harvest the product. And we deal with perishable products. So when it needs to be harvested, the people need to be there. So I think there are a lot of issues that will have to be addressed. And maybe one point that we are all talking about the health benefit of fruit and vegetables. There is one organization, which is the World Health Organization, which could help in disseminating message, in justifying why we need 5 a day or even more. And I understand that the US will also like to withdraw from these kind of organizations. So I think if we want to work collectively, I think it starts with working with international organizations, also WTO, which was partially paralyzed during the first Trump administration. And the appellate body, as it is called, has stopped functioning, meaning that the WTO was not operating as it should. So I think we have to see all of that. But still, to be on a positive note, we have for the fresh produce sector a global coalition where we discuss a number of issues like the issue on logistics, like the issue on the evolution of the supply chain in different parts of the world, and also the matters relating to consumption and health benefit of fruit and vegetables. So there are places where the sector can always find itself, but also Fruit Logistica, where we can meet and share opinion with other colleagues from around the world.
Yeah, and Chris, if I can comment
please.
on that, just, I mean, obviously all those topics you listed are the remit of the International Fresh Produce Association, and in particular labor. If you talk to any of our members, mostly around the world as well, not just the United States, labor is their number one issue, their number one challenge. And we've been working with policymakers for years to ensure that we have labor programs and reforms that enable growers to hire skilled workers legally and safely. And we will continue to advocate for that. This new administration, does care very much about farmers and growers. So we, again, as I said earlier, we have already been briefing the Trump transition team. And obviously, as the confirmations come to fruition, we'll be working with the confirmed officials and also their staffs to ensure they have the right resources and education and information to make the right decisions. It's about having a legal, safe workforce in this country and, quite frankly, any country. So that is one of the top priorities of the International Fresh Produce Association, in addition to driving consumption and sustainability, supply chain efficiencies, technology. I could go on and on. Food safety. We haven't even talked about food safety. I mean, that's, if labor's priority one, food safety is 1A in terms of ensuring that we have safe product around the world as well.
Yes. Well, I think those are all very, very important points to mention, and they just convince me even more that you three have in trays that are very, very full of things. You always have in trays that are very, very full, but they seem even fuller than they might otherwise have done. And this perhaps our 45 minutes are up. As Philippe mentioned a moment ago, the opportunity to get together and talk about these things and find common solutions, or start to find common solutions, is very, very important. And Fruit Logistica is a forum where we can do that, where we can have that contact, have those contacts, share that content, and do better commerce, as we were told at the very beginning, is what we're all there for. So thank you very much indeed, Cathy Burns, Philippe Binard, and Richard Schouten for attending today and for your contributions. Thank you very much indeed to David Ruetz for his comments at the top of the show. And thank you all of you for attending. Please, you can watch this on the Fruit Logistica website after the finish of this afternoon's broadcast. And I look forward to seeing all of you in Berlin very, very soon. Thank you for attending and have a nice rest of your day. Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all.